Hello and welcome to this edition of World Panorama. RSTV is a weekly show that gives you complete insights into the big international news stories that unfolded this week, the events that are changing our world, our future. Here is a look at the top stories in the headlines. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vows to annex part of a West Bank if he wins the re-election. If executed, the plan puts an end to hopes of a Palestinian state. Israel has occupied West Bank since 1967 but has stopped short of outright annexation. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson's renewed push to reach Brexit agreement with the EU will travel to Luxembourg on Monday to meet European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker for the first time. British Parliament passes law forcing Johnson to seek extension to the Brexit deadline if no deal is reached by mid-October. US-China exchange goodwill gestures ahead of trade talks. Beijing announces the 16 American products exempt from new tariffs until September 2022. Trump also postpones a planned tariff hike on Chinese imports by 2 weeks. But experts say a final trade agreement unlikely this year. North Korea confirms the second test launch of multiple rocket launcher. Test made hours after North Korea said it was willing to resume nuclear negotiations with the United States that was stalled in late September. And Trump pledges to hit Taliban harder as peace talks dead. US President insists the terrorist group showed weakness in killing a US soldier and 11 others in Afghanistan last week. Our top story this week, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu unveiled a controversial new campaign pledge. Netanyahu said that if he was re-elected in next week's general election, he would annex a significant chunk of the occupied West Bank. Palestinian leaders and Arab leaders condemned Netanyahu's announcement. Remember, Israel occupied the West Bank in the 1967 war. And since then, some 4 lakh Israeli settlers have moved to the West Bank, but Israel has stopped short of outright annexation. Netanyahu's statement comes ahead of a general election after a close vote in April that failed to give him the political support necessary to form a governing coalition.
Israel's Prime Minister's key announcement ahead of the national elections next week, Benjamin Netanyahu vows to annex the strategic heartland of the West Bank if he wins. The Israeli Prime Minister stood in front of a large map, saying he would first annex the Jordan Valley and move later to annex the remaining Jewish settlements in the northern Dead Sea. These two areas make up about a third of the West Bank. The Palestinian villages were displayed as enclaves that would not be annexed. Netanyahu even hinting that his plan may have been approved by Washington, saying the US president was likely to release his long-touted Middle East peace plan soon.
Out of respect for President Trump and out of great faith in our friendship, I will await it with applying sovereignty until release for the president's political plan. I am announcing my intention to apply with the formation of the next government, Israel's sovereignty on the Jordan Valley and northern Dead Sea.
It is noteworthy that Israel occupied the West Bank along with East Jerusalem, Gaza and the Syrian Golan Heights in 1967 Middle East War, but has stopped short of annexation. Israel then effectively annexed East Jerusalem in 1980 and Golan Heights in 1981. Although neither move was accepted internationally for decades. The Trump administration, however, recognized both steps, overturning previous US policy. Palestinians claimed the whole of West Bank area for a future independent state, and Netanyahu's action, if executed, would put an end to a fading hope for a Palestinian state. as it would gobble up most of the West Bank territory sought by the Palestinians. Arab ministers condemned Netanyahu's plan, saying it would undermine Israel-Palestinian peace process.
The Arab League Ministerial Council, which met in an irregular emergency session, considers Netanyahu's announcement as a dangerous progression, and a new Israel aggression would violate international law and the United Nations Declaration.
Netanyahu's announcement was the latest in a series of frenetic moves he has made in recent days, aimed at rallying his hardline voters ahead of the September 17th election. The international community, along with the Palestinians, considers Israel's settlements in the West Bank and East Jerusalem illegal. Nearly 700,000 settlers live in the two areas, in addition to over 2.5 million Palestinians. Netanyahu was not clear about the fate of the Palestinians. The Prime Minister leads the right-wing Likud party, which is currently neck and neck in the polls with the opposition centre Blue and White Political Alliance. The election comes after Netanyahu earlier this year failed to successfully form a workable coalition government following another vote. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha Television.
Britain's long-running Brexit drama turned into a crisis this week. This after British parliamentarians passed a law aimed at blocking a no-deal Brexit on 31st of October. They also twice rejected Prime Minister Boris Johnson's demand for a snap general election. Thereafter, Parliament was suspended until 14th of October, preventing MPs from discussing Brexit until 3 days before the Crunch EU summit, at which Brexit fate could be decided, and a fortnight before the current exit date. Now, as a result, Prime Minister Johnson will now travel to Luxembourg on Monday for his first meeting with the European Commission head Jean-Claude Juncker, as he seeks to renegotiate the exit deal that his predecessor Theresa May had reached with the bloc. Of chaos and anger in the House of Commons on Tuesday, as British Parliament was suspended for 5 weeks. As the prorogation got underway, opposition MPs staged a protest. Cries of "Shame on you" rose from the opposition benches. The Speaker of the House, John Bercow, who is supposed to be neutral otherwise, also expressed anger, saying that suspension of Parliament represented an act of executive fear, that is, an arbitrary order. He had earlier announced his impending retirement as Speaker.
This is not, however, a normal prorogation. It is not typical. It is not standard. It's one of the longest for decades, and it represents, not just in the minds of many colleagues, but huge numbers of people outside, an act of executive fiat.
The chaos unfolded after a day of high drama in which Prime Minister Boris Johnson lost his 6th parliamentary vote in as many days.
Excuses for delaying an election until the end of October, or perhaps...
The Prime Minister once again failed in his attempt to force an early general election in October. Opposition MPs insisting a law blocking a no-deal Brexit must be implemented first. In all, 293 MPs voted for the Prime Minister's motion for an early election, far short of the 2/3 needed.
The House, Mr. Speaker, has expressed its will until the Act has been complied with and no deal has been taken off the table. No deal taken off the table. We will not vote to support the dissolution of this House and a general election.
The ayes to the right, 311. The noes to the left, 302, so the ayes have it.
Parliament also voted by 311 to 302 for Johnson to publish Operation Yellowhammer documents detailing the government's no-deal Brexit plans, after a leaked version from early August warned of possible food and medicine shortages. Meanwhile, the bill to prevent Johnson from taking Britain out of the European Union without a deal was given royal assent by Queen Elizabeth II. It means Johnson now has to ensure that there is a deal in place. He has to go to the European Council meeting of leaders on 17th of October to seek an extension to Britain's membership of the bloc until 31st of January 2020, unless a deal is in place. However, Johnson still insists on leaving the European Union on 31st of October.
I think there are loads of people around the place who really want this thing done, and that includes the British people, but also in Brussels and our friends and partners across the EU. They want us to get on with it. I think we will get a deal, but if absolutely necessary, we will come out with no deal.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much indeed.
With the UK Parliament now suspended until mid-October and Prime Minister Boris Johnson's hope of an early election shattered, the focus of where Brexit is heading turns to Brussels. Those Britain-EU talks resumed on Wednesday, but hopes are not high for any agreements. With just days to go until the UK's departure from the bloc on 31st of October, it is still unclear as to how and when will the Brexit unfold. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV. And amid their ongoing trade war, the United States and China traded conciliatory gestures this week. Beijing on Wednesday released a list of 16 American products that would be exempt from new tariffs until September 2022. Donald Trump also then postponed a planned tariff hike on the Chinese imports by 2 weeks. Now, the moves from both sides has raised hopes that they can de-escalate a standoff over trade that has shaken financial markets and has cast gloom over the global economy. However, experts warn that this may just be a small ceasefire in their trade war and that the standoff is not yet over. Amid continuing US-China trade war, there has been a slight reprieve, potentially signaling a break in tensions between the two nations. On Wednesday, Beijing released a list of 16 American products that would be exempt from new tariffs until September 2020. That won't make a big impact on the US economy, but it looked like a promising sign headed into planned US-China trade negotiations next month. Then on Wednesday night, US President Donald Trump seemingly reciprocated with his own gesture of goodwill. He announced the 2-week delay of a 5% increase in tariffs from 25% to 30% on $250 billion of Chinese goods originally scheduled for 1st of October.
They asked whether or not it would be possible to delay the hit on the tariffs up to 30% from 25%. Would it be possible to take it off of the October 1st date? We gave them a 2-week in honor of President Xi. We gave them a 2-week reprieve. And so we'll be doing the tariffs on October 15th instead of October 5th or 1st.
The delay signals a de-escalation of tensions ahead of the trade negotiations that are slated to resume in Washington next month. As the trade war continues, analysts have warned of the impact, especially on the US economy and workers. Reports even pointing that imposition of tariffs on hundreds of billions worth of Chinese imports has resulted in 3 lakh fewer jobs being created and reduced US GDP by an estimated 0.3%.
China has raised tariffs on US imports. China has also reduced tariffs for the rest of the world. So US products are at a disadvantage in the short term. Now, long term, 5-10 years from now, can they recover their market share? I think that is a thought that is being discussed in a lot of boardrooms around the world and around the US.
There are warnings that the trade war also hits the world economy and increasing downward pressure. IMF also lowered its global growth forecast to 3.2% in 2019, and for 2020 the forecast was downgraded to 3.5%.
Our estimates is that it will lower the level of world GDP by 0.8% in 2020. It is important to resolve the trade disagreements and the tensions that exist, to wind back tariffs, to have sound policies on the international front.
Beijing and Washington were earlier close to a deal last spring, but certain differences resulted in the breakdown of talks. Now in early October, the talks are going to resume to reach a major trade accord, but experts are tamping down expectations, saying that it is unlikely that the US and China will strike a comprehensive trade deal by the end of Trump's first term. Officials in Beijing are more likely to wait to see if Trump loses in 2020. Should he win, though, China may be forced to come to some sort of agreement with the president, or the destructive trade war will continue well into the future. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV. And in World Panorama, we'll take a very short break. And after the break, we take a look at North Korea's relentless, carefully calibrated barrage of firepower. Another test was carried out this week, hours after North Korea said that it was willing to restart nuclear talks with the US. All the details coming up ahead. Stay tuned. North Korea this week carried out the second test launch of a super large multiple rocket launcher, the latest in a series of weapons tests performed amid a stalled diplomacy over the North's nuclear program. It was the second known test of the rocket launcher that North Korea says is needed to cope with the outside military threats. The first test of the weapon was on 24th of August. And Tuesday's rocket launcher test was made hours after North Korea said that it was willing to resume nuclear negotiations with the United States in late September. Experts say that with the recent tests, North Korea aims to wrest concessions from the US once their diplomacy resumes.
North Korea on Tuesday carried out the second test launch of the super large multiple rocket launcher. 2 short-range projectiles were fired towards the sea from the launcher. North Korea's state-run television KRT on Wednesday released the photographs of its leader Kim Jong-un overseeing the testing. Kim, who had guided the testing of the same multiple rocket launcher before, said its capabilities have been finally verified in terms of combat operation. The test came hours after North Korea offered to resume nuclear diplomacy with the United States.
Our military detected 2 unidentified short-range projectiles, which were launched from Kaichun in South Pyeongan province to east. The maximum flying distance of these projectiles has been detected around 330 km. South Korea and the US intelligence authorities are analyzing further details.
The launches happened just hours after a top North Korean diplomat working on nuclear negotiations with the United States said that Pyongyang is willing to sit with the United States for comprehensive discussions. Donald Trump on Wednesday also announced firing of his hardline national security advisor John Bolton, citing foreign policy disagreements.
So, John is somebody that I actually got along with very well. He made some very big mistakes. When he talked about the Libyan model for Kim Jong-un, that was not a good statement to make.
And Analysts say while North Korea conducts weapons tests for a range of purposes, including technical development and for the defense sector, Tuesday's launches appeared to have been timed to send a message to Washington as what may happen if the United States doesn't come to talks with North Korea with realistic proposals. Analysts, however, say Bolton's departure could help US efforts to revive the talks, but will not make Washington's aim of persuading Pyongyang to give up its nuclear weapons any easier. After more than a year of refraining from missile tests, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's regime has conducted 10 launches since May, including Tuesday's. Most of those are believed to be short-range missiles, and experts say they have shown impressive technological advancements. Trump has received plaudits and criticisms for his willingness to engage with Kim Jong-un directly in 3 meetings since June last year, but so far little progress has been made in getting Kim to give up his weapons programs. And regardless of Bolton's departure, Washington has given no indication that it will soften its demand for North Korea's ultimate denuclearization. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha Television.
And here is a look at some more international news stories in Global Buzz. Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau launched his re-election campaign on Wednesday, saying that Canadians need to decide whether they want to return to the failed policies of a Conservative government that believes in cuts and austerity. Trudeau kicked off his bid to remain in office ahead of a 21st of October election after meeting the country's Governor-General and dissolving Parliament. Trudeau had in 2015 defeated Conservative leader Stephen Harper, who ruled for 9 years. But the same son of late Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau could now be in troubles because polls say that opposition Conservative Party with its unknown leader Andrew Scheer is running close to Trudeau's Liberals. The US Supreme Court has given the go-ahead to Donald Trump administration plans that severely limit the ability of migrants to claim asylum. Under the rule, people arriving via a third country must claim asylum there first before arriving at the US border. The plan will affect migrants from Central America who travel north, often on foot, through Mexico. The Trump administration had unveiled the newer asylum policy in the month of July, but it was almost immediately blocked from taking effect by a lower court ruling by a judge in San Francisco. The song "Glory to Hong Kong" echoed through a Hong Kong shopping mall on Wednesday as hundreds of people gathered to sing in support of anti-government rallies. "Glory to Hong Kong" has become a rallying cry for more democratic freedoms in the semi-autonomous Chinese territory, where 3 months of protests over a now withdrawn extradition bill have evolved into a broader backlash against the government and greater calls for democracy. And rescue workers in the Bahamas are still searching for bodies after Hurricane Dorian devastated the islands last week. At least 50 people are confirmed dead now, and there is an urgent appeal to help the survivors in the aftermath of the hurricane. The death toll is likely to climb. Dorian was one of the most powerful Caribbean storms on record, a Category 5 hurricane with winds of 320 kilometers per hour. It rampaged over the Bahamas for nearly 2 days, becoming the worst disaster in the nation's history. US President Donald Trump has pledged to hit the Taliban harder than they have ever been hit before, as the US marked the 18th anniversary of the 11th of September attacks on Wednesday. Trump's comments came just days after he cancelled a secret Camp David meeting with the Taliban leaders and declared the peace talks are dead. Donald Trump's move came after an American soldier was killed in a suicide attack in the Afghan capital Kabul last week. The developments came as the US and Taliban officials were on the verge of signing a draft deal that could have led to the withdrawal of US troops from the country and, in return, a Taliban guarantee that they will not use Afghanistan as a launchpad for global attacks.
They thought that they had to kill people in order to put themselves in a little better negotiating position. When they did that, they killed 12 people. One happened to be a great American soldier. You can't do that with me, so they're dead as far as I'm concerned.
The US-Taliban talks aimed at ending the 18-year war in Afghanistan are dead. The US President announced the decision after 2 Taliban-sponsored bomb attacks in Kabul in the first week of September, one in which an American soldier was also killed. Trump also cancelled secret plans to host a Taliban delegation in the United States. However, Taliban said the US would lose the most for cancelling talks.
When I heard, very simply, that they killed one of our soldiers and 12 other innocent people, I said, there's no way I'm meeting on that basis. There's no way I'm meeting. They did a mistake.
The developments come after 2 sides appeared to close a deal. Last week, the top US negotiator said that there was a peace deal in principle, which envisaged the withdrawal of 5,400 American troops within 20 weeks, in return for Taliban guarantees that Afghanistan would never again be used as a base for terrorism. US and Taliban have been holding talks since October last year. However, many security analysts in Afghanistan and elsewhere had criticized the talks as it had kept the Afghanistan government out. Many believe that the talks would legitimize Taliban, a terror organization nurtured by Pakistan for years. After the collapse of the US-Taliban talks, Afghan President Ashraf Ghani sought to regain a hold on the peace process as he made a fresh call for peace with the Taliban, but insisted on a ceasefire.
The Afghan nation has already said that there are no limitations for the negotiations, but peace is not unconditional. But now, negotiations without ceasefire are impossible.
The Taliban is now in control of more territory than at any point before the 2001 US-led invasion. They have refused to hold direct talks with the Afghan government, calling it a puppet of the US government. Taliban have vowed to continue waging jihad, saying that killings will continue as long as foreign troops remained in Afghanistan. Experts say real peace will continue to be elusive, with Taliban not stopping its killing spree. For the time being, it is status quo in Afghanistan. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV. And before we go, here is a look at an adorable poor baby monkey who was found injured by a villager at his farming base in Yingtang City in East China. Well, the baby monkey is under Chinese national protection, given that this one is only about a month old. And the officials have let the villager zoo take care of the monkey for some period before he becomes healthy and old enough to live in the wild. Now, this baby monkey has got used to zoo and has even become friends with his 3 pet dogs. So take a look at these adorable visuals of the baby monkey playing as I take your leave. I'll see you next week in another edition of World Panorama. See you then. Bye-bye.